Today on Up Front, the new balance of power. Tony Evers, Wisconsin's 46th governor, prepares to take office. Next, I'll talk with the incoming Lieutenant Governor, Mandela Barnes, about what we can expect to see in the first year of Evers' administration. Plus, the push for prison reform. With a record number of inmates and rising costs, is it something a Democratic governor and a Republican legislature can agree on?
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Up Front with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Up Front. We begin today with the changing of the guard at the State House and a look at what the first year of the Evers administration might bring to Wisconsin. Tony Evers and the state's other elected Democratic office holders will take their oaths of office tomorrow morning at the Capitol Rotunda. That will be followed by a public receiving line, and the day will end with the inaugural ball at Monona Terrace in Madison. We are talking about what's to come with the incoming Lieutenant Governor, Mandela Barnes of Milwaukee. It's good to have you back on the program.
It's always a great time to be here. I want to thank you for inviting me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Give us some sense of what the message will be tomorrow from you and from Tony Evers. What will you be telling the people of Wisconsin?
It's going to be a message of optimism. We campaign with a positive message, talking about how we work to improve the state of Wisconsin, whether it's health care, whether it's providing good paying jobs, or making sure that people have a great school to send their children to. That's what the theme will be. That's what it was during the campaign, and that's what it will be in the administration.
You've been traveling around the state listening to folks. What are they telling you? What's the takeaway from those meetings?
Yeah, so we had the chance to get around to hear so many different opinions, a different perspective in each region of the state, but it came around to some very core issues. People want to make sure, again, that schools are fully funded. That was the primary issue. You get a little further up north, people talk about internet connectivity. Other parts of the state, we're dealing with water issues, clean air issues. So they want to make sure that we're going to work to do right by the environment as well.
So your predecessor, Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Kleefisch, called herself the Jobs Ambassador. She seemed to focus her efforts on that. Are you going to follow in that I guess that sort of new tradition of identifying a topic of interest, a particular area of expertise, and then pursue that, or are you going to do it differently?
Well, with there being so many issues that we need to get to work on right away, I want to focus on equity and sustainability as a whole, looking forward.
What do you mean by that?
What I mean is we need to take a long-term approach to planning our efforts in the state of Wisconsin, whether it's how do we produce energy. I think that Wisconsin can be a leader in renewable energy, one, to create jobs, but to make sure that we are reversing the harmful impacts of climate change. You know, the world's top scientists said we only have a few years left to get it right, maybe a decade, a little more, 12 years. So Wisconsin should be a leader. We should be leading that effort right here, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's the installation, whether it's retrofitting our public buildings. Clean energy is a space that we should be operating in, so that the next 10 years, the next 25 years, we can be providing good paying living wage jobs to replace the industry that we've lost over the last few decades.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the next year or so. How optimistic are you that you will be able to find common ground with the Republican legislature?
What's more important is that we found common ground with the people of the state of Wisconsin, and whether the Republican-controlled legislature wants to go along with that. Again, people prioritize their public schools. They expressed as much in the November 6th election. So with that being said, it's more so listening to the needs of their constituents than necessarily listening to our perspective. And it is my hope that people are listening to the people that got them elected, the people that they've been elected to represent.
I just want to clarify again, there seemed to be a little confusion last week about whether Governor Evers would abide by the laws that were passed in the lame duck session. He says, yes, he will. I just want to make that clear. Is that the case? Is that the intention of the new administration, to abide by these changes that have been made recently?
Well, the governor said that he doesn't intend to break any laws.
But you would expect there might be others who might challenge these in court, correct?
Well, I think that these should absolutely be challenged. I mean, this is what was the case for the last 8 years, and all of a sudden, because they don't like who got elected, they should have run for governor if they don't like who got elected. Maybe the outcome could have been different, but that's not the case. We're dealing with a Tony Evers administration. There is a Republican-controlled legislature, but they should not govern with solely based on political interest. They should govern in the interest of the people. The people elected Tony to lead this state, and he should be able to do that.
I want to have you respond to something that you've heard from Republicans in the last few weeks, and that is, that very few, really one of the new cabinet members is somebody who's from north of Highway 29, sort of a demarcation line in the state of Wisconsin. So the northern third of the state, they're arguing, is not represented in the way it should be, that there are too many Madison and Milwaukee people. What do you say to the folks who have made that criticism?
What I will say is that Milwaukee and Madison are a part of Wisconsin. And this is not about pitting any one part of the state against the other. We've done that for far too long, and it's gotten us nowhere. People are tired of the bickering. People want the best people, the best officials to lead these agencies. And I think that we've done our due diligence in our cabinet selections.
So on Thursday night, I looked at your Twitter account, The Other Mandela, and you mentioned that it was your 10-year anniversary of returning to the city of Milwaukee. You'd gone to school at Alabama A&M, but you came back to Milwaukee.
I came back home.
A lot of people, a lot of young African Americans do not come back to Wisconsin.
Far too many. Far too many of my friends.
How do we change that?
Well, it goes back to providing opportunity. That's what my campaign was about. I've seen too many of my friends leave the city of Milwaukee or leave the state of Wisconsin. They go to places like North Carolina, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., some even as close as Chicago, because there are more opportunities for younger people, especially younger people of color. And when we work to make sure, again, that we're creating an entirely new economy here in the state of Wisconsin, making sure that people have access to quality education and advancement opportunities, I think that's when we'll begin to see this trend change, and I want to be a part of it.
Your tweet called it the best decision ever that you ever made.
It was my best decision ever.
Was it always the best decision, or has that changed because of your election?
Oh, there were certainly ups and downs. Yeah. There were certainly ups and downs. As you know, I've won elections, I've lost an election. Right. So I've had periods of unemployment here in the city of Milwaukee. So it was not without challenge that we've gotten to this place. But overall, it was definitely the best decision that I've made.
Mandela Barnes will be the new Lieutenant Governor of Wisconsin. He will take office officially tomorrow. It's good to have you back on the program.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Thanks very much for being with us. Coming up next on Upfront, corrections reform is a goal for the new governor. I'll ask two state lawmakers working on this issue about their ideas, the cost, and the chances for a bipartisan agreement. That's when we come back.
Upfront with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company.